Okay, so welcome to another episode of the Imperfect Men's Club. I'm here today with my partner and colleague, Jim Gurley. And today we're going to talk about unconscious bias. And to frame it, I'll go back to our foundational flywheel. And if for those of you that have not heard of the flywheel before, Jim and I use it as a basis for all of our conversations. And we do that because the wheel is basically a circle of concentric circles. And in the center of it is the self, the ego. And Jim created a list of self hyphen words that we often use that all have slightly different meanings, like self-awareness, self-reliance, self-confidence. I think there's a list of about 20 of them, and they come in real handy. But when you move out from the wheel, we've identified 5 areas of life, and then subsets of those, and so on and so on and so on. But the 5 areas of life are, in no particular order: worldview, health, profession, money, and people or relationships. And then, just as a for instance, in the health, when you go out another layer, we go into mental health and physical health. When we go out from mental health, we go to emotions and thoughts. So it builds like a dropping a stone into a pond, and the circles build like a butterfly effect, if you will. But this topic today, this topic of unconscious bias, was driven specifically by a couple conversations that Jim has had recently, but more generally speaking, just the overall political landscape and how this word has been. I use the term bastardized, and Jim likes the word hijacked. I think they're both appropriate. But Jim, welcome, and good to see you again. Where are we going with this topic today?
Oh, Mark, there's a lot of places to go with this one. Yeah, like I was saying, I got together with some good friends day before my birthday last Friday, and conversation, like always, starts off with one thing, spins off to another, and again, great guys, really good friends. They both happen to be attorneys, so they definitely have a perspective on life, that may be unique, but yeah, politically, we may see things differently, but once you start talking, you start to realize. I think as humans, we start to hold on to a particular group that we belong to. It's kind of like your team, right? Whether you're a Raider fan or, in your case, I know you're from Boston, so it's New England Patriots. You're going to hold on to your team to the end, regardless, and
Yeah.
and that involves some unconscious bias. I think it's a human thing. It's a normal thing. Um, and I think at the end of the day, most of the time we do agree on the same things. It's just how we get there is what becomes interesting. I happen to have a kind of a chip on my shoulder, full disclosure, that the word has been hijacked in a way that's not productive. It comes loaded with its own set of biases and stereotypes. So yeah, let's just break it down, talk about it.
Yeah, I think well, one of the when you brought up the topic earlier, the first thing that struck me was, what are my unconscious biases? And
Mm-hmm.
and I did not start with I don't have any,
Mm-hmm.
because that's bullshit.
Yeah.
Everybody has some.
Yeah, no, I
But I
appreciate that. Yeah, I felt
but
the same way after one of the topics. So yeah, keep going.
Yeah, but I think this is, to me, it's about self-awareness. It's about, okay, well, if I'm going to have a discussion with somebody, and I think the English language is being bastardized in general, but if I'm like, for instance, I've told you this 100 times. If one of my daughters wants to talk to me about feminism, for instance, right, just pulling it out of my proverbial behind, um, I say to them first, okay, tell me what you believe that word means. And they tell me, and then I tell them what I believe that word means. And then we can both have a conversation about the
Mhm.
same word.
Yeah.
And I think without doing that, particularly with topics that are particularly polarizing,
Mhm.
you could have two people with different worldviews never, ever, ever talking about the same word and thinking that they are, you
Yeah.
know,
Yeah.
because of unconscious bias,
Yeah.
right?
Based on to your point, Mark, based on generation, male versus female, region of the country of the world, political worldviews, all of that, and that's exactly what tied into this conversation because um, again, I wouldn't say that our yeah, our political parties may be different, right? But I wouldn't say they're extreme either way, or I'm extreme, but this came up, and what fundamentally it was about how we feel about government, and the the topic evolved into something that we completely agree on, even though we have our unconscious bias of how to get there. And they just believe, and so do I, that fundamentally, as Americans, we should have uh, three things. One, free education, which is true. It's a problem that we've indebted our young people with student debt for the rest of their life. That really was unfair. How we got to that should have never happened, right?
Mhm.
In my opinion, healthcare is completely broken. It's become a corporation and profitable, right? To the point where CEOs and business leaders can make millions and millions of dollars every year, while everybody else gets fucked completely. And then it spun off into, here in California, our PG&E rates continue to double or triple and so on, right? And I don't know the exact bonus amount, but I know it's upwards towards $30 million. The CEO of our public utility company, PG&E, it's a woman, uh, received in bonuses last year, right? And yet our rates go up, and then the collusion, of course, with our own government, and I guess fundamentally, how could one disagree with each other? But because the lobbyists, or let's just say the politicians, are in the pockets of the politicians, it's become, you know, kind of a mess. But even though we both agree we want the same thing, our unconscious bias create these argument of how to get there, just
It's
because
it,
of
it, it,
our
it,
associated political parties, right?
well, I think it's deeper than that. I think it's deeper than that. I think that, it's easy to say that C-suite person got $40 million bonus and the company's not profitable or the rates are still going up or whatever, but that's not a straight line, right? There's so many pockets to that. There's so many areas to take a look
But
at.
why is it not a straight line? Why should it? Explain to me how
Well,
it's not a straight line. There's a direct straight line to compensation of the average employee to the CEO, and the compensation.
I think
Never
yeah,
used to be like that, Mark. If you go back, there was some changes in the law around the mid '80s that changed a lot of this. There was a time when companies were invested in their people and it was best for the company, not just for the CEO. And
well,
that there was a
my
fundamental
point is
change.
this. My point is this. When I say it's not a straight line, it's like, well, the first question I would ask is why is that happening? How is that happening?
Yeah,
Right? I don't think you can say you're in a vacuum now. Take the educational system, the
yeah,
other example, because I'm more familiar with that. I don't know anything about utility companies. I
yeah,
don't know how they work. I don't know how they're subsidized. I don't know where the money comes from. Education, I put a couple of young ladies through college. I
yeah,
went to college. I'm a dad,
yeah.
and I'm in the career development space. I talk to people about education all the time,
That's right.
right?
And you're Notre
So,
Dame guys, so you understand private education as well, right? Yeah,
yeah. So it's like I look at education, I'm like, totally agree. It is fucked up. It's
yeah,
way too expensive.
yeah,
And we're not teaching fundamental stuff. We're not preparing kids, like you like to say. We put them into these academic institutions, which is socialism, and
yeah,
then we drop them into the world of
yeah. We
capitalism,
release them to
com-
capital and wonder why.
com- completely ill-equipped to make that transition. There is no transition. It's
Yeah,
like good luck, And oh, by the way, you owe the government 250 grand, and good luck with that too. So, but then you have educational institutions, and Notre Dame's one of them. Their
yeah,
endowment is in the billions, like maybe
yeah,
tens or hundreds of billions. I don't know, but
yeah,
it's up there. It's up there with Harvard. And I think I heard somebody say you could literally put everyone through school for free just through the endowments of many of the larger institutions in the country.
hmm,
But now I want to do the math. Let's do the math. Like, who's revisiting the curriculum? Why
hmm,
are we putting people out in the world with women's studies degrees?
yeah,
That like all of this nonsense, and it's
yeah,
it's corrupted from the inside out and from the outside in.
yeah,
So it's not a it's not a like, well, college is too expensive. All right, now that's a vacuum comment. It's true, but
Mhm.
why is it too expensive? How did
Yeah.
this happen?
Yeah.
It's just like my biggest thing about why the country is so fucked up is because of the breakdown of the family unit, which involves fathers not in homes, which involves faith of some kind, a belief in a higher power. These things are looked on now scornfully. It's like, it's cool to just have sex with whoever you want. If you're dropping kids into the world, you don't have to take care of them. We're actually endorsing that behavior, right?
Yeah.
And I'm not naive. I know, single fatherhood is, I mean, I was a single father for all intents and purposes for a long time. So single motherhood, I mean, plenty of those stories make perfect sense, hardships, circumstances, but generally speaking, we used to think a man and a woman should get married. If they want to, they should have kids. It probably is a good idea to go to church. And if you want them to get a good education, you should probably participate in their education by
Mhm.
talking to their teachers and the principal and all that thing. If you don't have a strong family unit, that kid gets no support. It's roll the dice. Good luck, But look at the reading rates. Look at the math rates and the science rates of our kids compared to other countries. They're
Yeah.
going down, down, down as the cost is going up, up, up. And throw on top of that a bowl full of indoctrination into complete bullshit. It's a mess.
Yeah.
It's a mess.
Yeah.
So
I guess
that's
what,
some of my unconscious bias.
yeah, we had that. Again, I guess I just the perspective was it's true. If we don't start at some at the highest level, some basic changes, we're having a breakdown in in society, even our government right now. The one job that government was to provide was security and safety, right?
Mhm.
I was born in Oakland. I live, it's on the other side of the hill, so it's the extreme difference. But that place is out of control right now.
Yeah.
It's absolutely out of control. Three businesses just last week shut down. They can't afford to do business there to protect their employees and their own customers. Uh,
Yeah. Well, I mean, look at the minimum wage language going around now. You start paying people that work at fast food restaurants $20 an hour.
yeah,
That's not sustainable.
yeah,
I'm not suggesting we shouldn't try to figure out how to make everybody able to, pay the rent,
yeah.
but I don't think that's not a straight line. Getting my hamburger is going to cost $15, you know?
Yeah, but hey,
So
here's the other side of this one, though, Mark. It's also they can pay him what $10 an hour, $15 an hour, and then yet don't not provide any kind of health care, and as a result, us taxpayers have to now pay for the health care.
yeah,
The corporation benefits. That's the point they were making to me, that corporations have um, benefit from a lot of these policies, and they don't pay their fair share of taxes. And for the first time, my unconscious bias, uh, like you said, as a self awareness exercise, I started to realize, hey, they're actually they're making some pretty good points, and not only they make good points, I happen to agree with them fundamentally. And then
yeah. I
again,
mean, yeah, conceptually, I think that the way that it always worked in my world when I owned a company was, if everybody wasn't doing well, I wasn't doing well, you
right,
know? And so, and my companies were much smaller, so it was very easy to connect the dots and see where things were. What's the
yeah,
commission structure and
yeah,
what kind of support do you have to
yeah.
close a deal? I mean, there's all kinds of detail
Yeah,
under the
no, no,
covers.
Mark, I'm glad you mentioned that because the conversation again continued to evolve. They were very specific. We were not they, us. We were specific. It was the large corporations that created really monopolies, and that at one
Mhm.
point our government would break those monopolies up, and that's changed, and that these corporations just continue to make more and more money and basically eliminate their competition and can do whatever they want to do to the point where they don't pay taxes and they don't even have to pay their employees because they don't have any competition. It's not
Well,
even capitalism
I
anymore.
know, I know. Well, it's made me think of. I was watching this weekend. I ran into a couple of clips of George Carlin,
Mm-hmm.
and he was talking about this 20, 30 years ago.
Was he? Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, he's like there used to be seven oil companies. Now there are three oil companies,
Yeah,
and pretty soon it's going to be two oil companies.
that's
Well,
right.
that to me speaks directly to who is responsible for the fact that monopolies are supposed to be against the law,
Right.
right? And
Right.
how does that happen? How do we go from 7 to 3? And who thinks that's a good thing,
Yeah.
right? So that's where I say I need more context. I need to have some history. How did this happen? Why did this happen? Because you and I talk about this all the time. I think most of what's going on out there is big companies are throwing band-aids at symptoms. That's how I feel about the pharmaceutical companies. It's like if you eat really well and you don't have a predisposition to some chronic illness, you have decent genes and you exercise and you figure out how to manage your stress and your sleep, you don't need fucking prescription medicine.
Yeah.
That's a fact,
Yeah.
right? But we're pushing it on everybody and everybody's believing it, you know?
Yeah.
So it's like there's so many angles to this thing, you know?
Yeah.
It's like if you're Dr. Fauci and you're allowed to invest in Pfizer, like what
Yeah.
the fuck is that all about?
Yeah.
And so that comes back to self accountability. I think we live in a victimhood society right now, and many of these problems are created by the fact that we're pushing victimhood being okay. And it's woe is me. It's not. No, wait a second. Let me teach you how to stand up. Let me teach you how to fight. Let me teach you how to exercise.
Yeah.
That's the root cause, right?
Yeah. Yeah. I heard a guy talk this morning. Uh, I don't know, it was a podcast, what it was. And he blamed all this on DEI, that's like the worst thing that's ever happened to the US because it's not just created division, it's created confusion, reverse racism. And there's something to say for that. But I just put something up on the chat. Read that. That was the word I was looking for. And that's the word that he used to describe what we've moved away from. So
Is it meritocracy?
yes, yeah,
Yeah, I mean, I before I move off the DEI thing, I started writing about that a couple years ago because as soon as I heard what it was, I'm like, that's not going to that's not sustainable,
yeah.
and it's proving to be unsustainable, and I think we've gotten rid of it in the state of Florida. I think DeSantis is successful. It's no longer in Disney. It's no longer in any of the county stuff or any of the government stuff. It's against the law.
Well,
So
it certainly wasn't good for corporate profits. We know that.
nope, nope.
And the shareholders, if they care about money, which ultimately I think that's what it's about, you're going to see a big shift in the coming years of them moving
Yeah,
away from
yeah.
that.
And I think that the easiest examples are the ones with where critical skills are involved, like airline pilots and doctors.
Yeah.
You know, it's like, eh, if it doesn't, and it doesn't work on professional sports teams either. Like if it doesn't work in a couple of places, then it doesn't work anywhere.
Yeah, read the meaning of this because
So
that's the first thing I thought of is
yeah,
sports, and this is why we both appreciate sports because
I want the best guy, man. I
I
want the
want the
best
best guy.
guy.
Yeah,
So this is meritocracy.
yeah.
It's a political philosophy.
Hmm.
Meritocracy is the notion of a political system in which economic goods or political power are vested in individual people based on ability and talent rather than wealth or social class. Advancement in such a system is based on performance as measured through examination or demonstrated achievement.
Yeah.
Yeah.
See, the reason I like this definition or this meaning was because it, in paragraph or like the second, third sentence is wealth or social class.
Mm-hmm.
Interesting, right? Because you could tell that the assumption is for a higher social class. Now we've gone in reverse, where we've taken other social classes and then not measured it and made that more important than the actual individual abilities. We've moved
Yep.
away from individual abilities.
Yep. Yep.
And I know
No,
you
there's a
said, yeah, go ahead.
yeah, there was I get a prayer every morning from Notre Dame, and this morning it was involving Jesus healing someone on the Sabbath, and how the Pharisees were aghast. That's against the law. You're not supposed to work on the Sabbath. And who do you think you are? And the comment by the person who interpreted the thing was, why is it not possible to hold people accountable with compassion? And I think that's a big deal today. It's like if you're pushing people toward accountability, you're being mean, you're making things hard. No, not if you do it with compassion,
Hmm.
with the explanation that this is good for you. You're learning a new skill. You're learning how to be stronger. You're learning how to get better.
Yeah.
And I'm doing that for your best interest and the collective interest of society. And if we all had the ability to live accountable lives, but also be compassionate to our fellow man, that's a pretty powerful combo. And it seems like we either do one or the other. We can't figure out how to combine the two.
Yeah. But I like it too. It says individual based on an ability and talent. It has to be based on that. I guess who measures that? Who decides? But
Well, it goes
I
on. It goes on. I think ability and talent are the stepping stone that lead to performance, demonstrated achievement, right? Because you can have ability and talent and be a lazy ass, right?
yeah,
But if you're examining that, you're being self-aware
yeah,
and you're maximizing your performance and you're demonstrating achievement, there should be a reward there. But in the absence of that,
it's
to give
right.
someone a reward without examination, demonstrated achievement, and performance, that I don't know how anybody can see that as sustainable. Because
It's not.
people
That's
that
what I'm
are,
saying. They'll select a social class,
Mhm,
elevate that social class just because of it's a social class,
mhm.
and then expect why everybody's kind of confused.
Oh yeah, I mean it's pick one. Pick
Yeah,
a you could pick a race, you could pick look at the argument around Gaza and Palestine and Israel. Look at where that's going. Look at the transgender movement and where that's going. Look at what happened to Black Lives Matter again. I'm like, oh yeah, they're not in jail? Huh, that's
yeah,
interesting. Okay. So it's to your point. Those are all groups, right? And whether it's a social class or a group, social classes are groups, right? Groups aren't always social classes. But yeah, whenever you put somebody into a group and they get special treatment and it has nothing to do with achievement or performance, the people that are performing and achieving are not going to tolerate that for a long period of time, which creates what? Division,
yeah,
which is what we're living in now.
yeah. Here's the question for you: is that division? Is that what sells advertising? Does that division is what sells votes or counter votes for politicians? Uh, is that division? Yeah, I really think that at the very top of it, there's drivers, and those drivers is either advertising and or it's politicians looking for votes.
Yeah, those are, the things that I see driving behavior are control, power, and money.
Mm-hmm.
And I suppose notoriety, celebrity, those are also attractive. It's the old thing, it's why is there traffic right here? Oh, two cars crashed into each other on the other side of the road, and we're going to slow down to watch that.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, human beings like watching bad shit happen, it seems.
Yeah,
And division, it's like Denzel Washington says about, if you don't have a dad and and you're not raised by an uncle or a grandfather, by the time they don't throw 7-year-olds in jail, right? If it gets to the system, it's too late, right? It's not the system, it's the family, you know. And it's like, there's so many areas of this. I think on the topic of unconscious bias, back to the beginning, I started thinking, what are mine? And I think that do I have an unconscious bias towards black people? No, I don't believe I do. I do have an unconscious bias for teenage boys that don't have their belts on their pants and they're showing their underwear off and they got shit hanging off their body and tattoos all over. Yeah, I'm gonna go on the other side of the road regardless of the skin color of that kid, right?
yeah,
That is that an unconscious bias? Yeah, towards that person doesn't have any respect for himself, so why should I expect him to have any respect for me?
yeah.
That's a critical thinking exercise, a little mini one that I go through in my little head. But when I see a
But,
black
but
person,
you would be labeled as somebody would listen to that and label you as a racist just for that.
yeah, yeah, and I honestly don't care. I honestly don't care. It's that's another word, dude. You
Yeah,
drop the word racist, you can't take that back.
right.
And well, what is a racist? Well, a racist is someone who thinks ill of someone because of an inherent trait, a
Yeah.
religion, a gender, a race. Those are all forms of racism in my mind.
Yeah.
But if you're giving everybody the benefit of the doubt and saying, okay, well, see how you lead, oh, you're leading with a smile. Oh, you're extending your hand to shake my hand. Oh, you're opening the door for me. I mean, it's very easy to lead optimistically, to lead positively,
Yeah.
but these people that talk about, getting arrested, I've been pulled over we've had this discussion. I've been pulled over by the police twice when they pulled their guns, right?
Yeah.
They pulled their guns, right? And then they found out that I looked like a guy who robbed the bank.
Yeah.
I looked like a guy who was shooting a BB gun at people on the beach. And
Yeah.
those were real events. And
Yeah.
in one event, they handcuffed me. I was sitting at a bar having lunch, waiting for my car to get washed.
Yeah.
And the guy robbed the bank down was 6'4" and looked just like me. Right. That's what you're supposed to do. Because if you don't do that, you're going to get killed, you know? So, and
Yeah.
the BB gun guy, he put me on the ground and cuffed me.
Yeah.
And so, and they both apologized. And I said, don't sweat it, man. Don't sweat
Yeah.
it.
It's
But
just,
I could just as easily have turned around and said, what the fuck are you doing? And
yeah.
then I'd be in jail, you know?
Yeah, I'm just laughing because I can remember the three times I've been in handcuffs, and they certainly had the right guy. There was no there was no mistaken identity on that on those.
Well, that's a very self-accountable thing to say.
Well, I appreciate you finding that one. But yeah, I also think that this also a brainwashing of unconscious bias is asking us to override our good judgment. I mean, we
Hmm.
really have got to the point now where you can't even use good judgment because with the fear of being accused of unconscious bias or racism or some other bullshit when we need that as a survival skill to have judgment
No question. No
and
question.
unconscious bias
Yep.
because based on uh, facts and statistical events
Or
past
experiences.
or personal experiences what we're just supposed to ignore that and I don't know I find that very disturbing that
No, that would be
group of people
foolish.
that are asking us to put all that aside
Hmm?
just so one group can feel better about themselves as they continue to increase the crime or whatever the activity is because they can get away with it more. That in my opinion, I'm only speaking for what I see every day in California, uh, particularly in the Bay Area, and the shit's just out of control because there's no consequences.
No, there's no consequences. There's no accountability. And look, I don't like I've lost trust in the word Republican and the word Democrat. I've lost trust in the word conservative and liberal. I think that most people would say, I'm pretty sure most people would say there's a group on the far right and a group on the far left. They're out of their fucking minds.
Yeah,
Okay. When you bring it in a little bit, you get to a point on both sides. You're like, okay, we can start talking.
yeah,
And to be at the beginning, we disagree, but we agree to continue the conversation. We don't take the non-accountable out. We don't raise our voice. We're not disrespectful. We don't change the subject,
yeah,
and we don't walk away from the conversation that's not concluded. Right? If
yep.
we can get there and get rid of the people on the far right and the far left, fuck them. They don't
Yep.
belong in the conversation.
Well
How do we
said,
do?
Mark.
How do we do that?
Yep,
How do we do that?
yep. I agree with you. Just good, respectful manners. Yes, sir. No, thank you. Just open the door. Just common courtesy. It cuts across to every group of people. Good
Yes,
people are good people,
yes,
and
yes.
everybody should have every right to have their political views or whatever their experiences are. That's what America's about, right?
Well, I think
Um,
if you look at a city like San Francisco,
mhm.
which to your point, and you're there. I mean, you don't live there. You live close, and you drive through there. You go down
Yeah,
there. You've seen it. It's not
yeah,
a theory. It's real.
yeah,
Um, just
yeah.
look at the people that are running that, and what they're not. There's no accountability.
None.
Everything's okay, and then this is what happens. And if you come to Orlando, you gotta look to find a homeless person, right? And place is pretty clean. There's not a lot of crime, it's booming
Well, it is,
economically.
Mark, I don't want to, yeah, at the risk of bashing my own state that I live in, it is the direct result of who they voted for. These laws that they're not enforcing by choice, or laws they created, like the go steal anything you want and there's no punishment for under $1,000, have consequences. And so I'll just say it. I don't feel that sorry for them. You keep it voting for the same people and you get the same result. It's again, and it's not everywhere in California, by the way. It's just certain cities that
Yeah,
year
and I
after
get,
year continue to bring in the same people. They don't make changes. You should
yeah,
see, like you said, you'll be driving down the street. This is I don't go there very often anymore, but if you're like in Oakland, and some guys are flying by like about 60 miles an hour running red lights, they
yeah,
don't care.
yeah, yeah. He's going to kill
Uh,
somebody.
yeah,
Some innocent person's going to die. I
yeah,
mean, look, this girl that got killed by an illegal immigrant in Atlanta, and the president didn't say her name until they were screaming at him at the State of the Union. I mean, this guy was not questioned at the border apparently, or they knew he was a criminal and they let him in anyway. He went to New York and molested some kid, and they arrested him and let him out. And so he
yeah.
came down to Atlanta and he killed this girl. And it's like, why that family should be able to sue the United States government, and no one's doing anything about it as far as I know. I was listening to Riley Gaines, the swimmer,
Yeah.
on Joe Rogan's podcast, and I've heard her speak. She's a pretty strong young lady,
Yeah,
man.
she's impressive. Yeah.
She's
And
very,
she's
very impressive.
consistent, and she's not rolling over on this one. She's not letting it
No,
go.
no, I mean, it's like that. But the other part of this is nobody to. She said that in the short term distance, the she beat her in the 400 meter, or the longer 200 meter, maybe I can't remember. But she tied. Like
Wow.
that was like not even a hundredth of a second. They were exactly the same time, and the officials of the event pulled her over in private and said, "We're sorry, Riley, but the cameras have to see her on the podium." She said
For
that
what? For political reasons? For advertising reasons? What are you talking about?
to save their own ass from getting exposed as transgender phobic or something. I don't. The political agendas behind it. We don't get to see that. We don't get to hear that conversation. They won't make that conversation public. And this she is still swimming, like going towards the Olympics. What are the other countries in the world gonna? They're gonna let a man swim against their women? That's going to be an interesting conversation.
Yeah.
And the other part of
Very
all
sad.
this,
That's a complete setback. And I know you had two daughters that were very involved in sports. You saw the
yeah,
benefits, but that really is undermining all that progress. So was that Title IX? Is that what it was?
yeah, Title IX. I remember I was at Notre Dame when that first came out, and they
Yeah.
they dropped the men's hockey program to invest in some of the women's
Look at
programs.
the
And
benefits for women that's achieved, and that's yeah, appears to be being
none,
undermined by this.
yeah, none of this is good for anybody. It's just a
Yeah.
question of how quickly people figure it out. I think the root cause needs to be addressed in some of these things. Let's stop fucking around with symptoms that just make other people rich and other people more powerful. And I agree with your friends in theory that education is fucked up and healthcare is fucked up. I mean, I've been in the healthcare system recently with my son, and I'll tell you one thing: the nurses were great,
Oh, it's
but
not. Yeah.
but the amount of waste
Oh,
is astounding.
yeah.
From surgical gloves to plastic cups.
Yeah.
And when you get the charge on the bill for a plastic cup, it's not 50 cents, it's $5, it's 7.50, $10. It's like, where's how many people are in the process from manufacturing, distribution to delivery in the hospital? I bet you there's 10 people in there, and we don't need eight of them,
Yeah. I'll
you
share
know?
this one last thought. I know you got to go, so we'll wrap up. But I told you I went to the international rugby tournament down in Southern California last week,
Mhm.
and it was at the name of the stadium was Dignity Health. So the whole entire I'm watching this international event, I'm seeing this advertising of Dignity Health.
Mhm.
And then I'm asking myself, I'm not sure that's a good idea that health insurance, basically a hospital provider, has enough money to buy stadium rights, right?
Yeah.
What comes with that? Of course, this the luxury suites, which I was in, not that theirs. So I don't want to be complete hypocrisy on this, but yeah, I'm just not sure that this idea of privatizing health to the point where they can buy stadium names and same with PG&E. You go to a baseball game, you see PG&E. Why do we need a PG&E fucking commercial? I'm not sure we need a public utility commercial, right?
Yeah. Well,
It,
I think no, totally. I mean, we got to, there's a lot of stuff that needs to be investigated, and we don't seem to be interested in investigating a lot of things that need to be investigated. And I'll conclude with my, I think I'm glad you brought the topic up of unconscious bias. And I think that my suggestion to anyone who's interested in my opinion is that that's something that we all should stop and think to
yeah,
ourselves, what are my unconscious biases?
yeah. Circles
And,
back to self-awareness that goes
yeah,
right
yeah,
into what we've been talking about
right
every
into
week,
the
right?
wheel.
Yeah,
And it wouldn't it be a good idea
yeah,
to investigate them prior to producing an article, prior to making a speech, prior to entering a conversation or going into a meeting? Just check yourself at the door and say, what am I bringing joy and gratitude and love into this conversation, or do I have another agenda that I'm not yet conscious of?
yeah,
Because that's how you become conscious of those things.
yeah, yeah, yeah. I don't think we're going to solve it today, Mark, but we did our best. So,
Hey, a little one step at a time, dude. One step at a time. One conversation at a time.
yeah.
All right, Jim. I
All
enjoyed
right.
it.
So did I. I'll talk to you next week.
See you.